Welcome back, folks. I'm excited to bring this facilitated discussion to you with Gloria Doherty. Before we get started, I just want to give a shout out. We have a new captioner, LaDonna, so big thank you to LaDonna for taking care of captions for us. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Gloria.
I am very glad that we could join you for this session. You will notice by the title of this session, it is not a presentation, but it's going to be a discussion, a conversation among all of us. So we're looking forward to learning from all of you on ways that you would like to continue collaborating. My colleague, Kelly, comes from the University of Idaho and will be guiding that discussion. But first, I'd like to give you a little bit of history. I'd like to tell you about a collaboration of two consortia, the Orbis Cascade Alliance, of course, and the Northwest Academic Computing Consortium, which is often referred to as NWACC. That consortium, many of our institutions participate in, and it is focused on IT and instructional or educational technologies. So these two entities determined to further a common goal that we all share, to ensure that digital resources and services are accessible to all of our users. And out of that collaboration came a joint accessibility working group. So in 2018, which in COVID years feels like a decade ago, that working group was initiated, and we began by developing a survey. In March of 2019, a survey was distributed to all of our participating institutions in our consortia. I'm going to have you go ahead and move to the next slide. So out of that collaboration, we designed a survey that would ask questions about our interest in and needs that we have to improve digital accessibility on our campuses. And then if you'll move to the next slide, out of that survey, we engaged 167 individual respondents that represented 35 member institutions. And out of that survey, one of the most frequently requested collaborations was to develop an online knowledge base of policies and best practices. So in addition to that survey, we also started to do things like partnering with some conferencing. We coordinated with the annual NWACC Instructional Technology Roundtable in 2019 and offered a half day at the close of their conference to be able to address accessibility with a keynote and some breakout sessions. And if you'll move to the next slide. We also have started developing some communication. You can go to NWHeat.org, and there you will be able to subscribe to our listserv network. You can see some professional development events that we have been offering, and you would be able to participate in helping us develop that knowledge base. So I encourage you to go to the NWHeat, and I believe the next slide will show a screenshot of that site, where you see you can join the email list. You can look at our upcoming events. Right now, I can tell you that we did a full series of 4 webinars with the Department of Education civil rights attorneys. And they covered 4 sessions for us on different topics in accessibility. And at this moment, we are engaging with WebAIM representatives to develop, again, some presentations through webinars, 60-minute webinars that we serve periodically throughout the academic year. And also, we're looking at some ways to do some hands-on events that can be virtual. And then you also see we reference that accessibility knowledge base. What I want to do is invite Kelly to be our facilitator to walk us through, and we are going to give you multiple ways to communicate. Certainly the first and easiest way is in the chat. You can make comments in the chat, And then we're also going to ask Elizabeth to share some links with you. One link takes you to a Google Doc. It's a collaborative document, and she'll also bring that up on screen, that will allow you to be able to write a little bit more. So chat is a great spot. That collaborative doc is a great spot. And then we also have, yes, a survey, of course. So you would be able to take the link to the survey, and you will also on our website see the link to that survey that invites you to share more about what you were looking for in a knowledge base and how it could be organized, and also to see what level of participation you'd like to have in this consortial collaboration. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gloria. Hello, everyone. I'm Kelly, and I'm seeing a lot of different anonymous creatures signing into the Google Doc. Thank you for clicking on that link. And this is one of our places that we do want you to collaborate and go ahead and write down your ideas or what you're thinking, or answers to these questions. We'll start off with the first one. What are our identified needs? And just to clarify that a little bit, the identified needs of everyone on this call, what kind of obstacles have you come across in your day-to-day tasks or your jobs that concern accessibility that you wish you had a resource to go to, but you didn't? Oh, and I see Anonymous Panda already typing. Fabulous, thank you. Okay, so as other people can type in the chat or on the Google Doc, one of my examples is knowing how to remediate PDFs for course reserves, because that's what I do on a day-to-day. I'm a course reserves coordinator. So we have a few things going on our Google Doc, which could we bring up that Google Doc on screen as well, Elizabeth? Thank you, fabulous. And I'll go ahead and just read out a few. So for the identified needs of everyone on this call, daily obstacles that we're getting involved with. One is vendors seem big and untouchable. We need a way to address inaccessible content centrally. I've seen this come up quite a bit, yes. Okay, and the next one is, I focus quite a bit on LibGuides and making the shared boxes and their contents as accessible as possible for our users, especially complex infographics. All right, great. I'm not seeing anything in the chat, but all right, Anonymous Alligator. And as people are typing in, go ahead and you can read the two additional questions that we have on this Google Doc. And go ahead and start thinking about those, thinking about what would be best, what would work best for you in an online repository. Best practices for alt text, okay. Providing accessibility resources for making videos and electronic resources more available and accessible for users. For example, manual captioning. That's a really good one, actually. I haven't come across a resource yet in my own research, so that would be a good one to provide. All right. Ways to test for accessibility and teaching content by someone who didn't create it. Break the stigma of having a disability. Absolutely. Yes, I'm so glad that everyone is participating in this Google Doc. This is excellent. Thank you. All right. And it is a-okay to also not just type down your answers in this chat, but if you would like to speak, please unmute yourself. Again, this is a discussion and we'd love to hear from you. Software for making content accessible for PDFs. Yes, we have some of those resources already available on our website that we're hoping to get more of. Wonderful. Oh, helping with finding funds, writing for grants.
Nice.
That's a good one. Okay. All right. And so this is just what folks have gotten in their day-to-day. These are obstacles that they've come across in their day-to-day. So let's go ahead and continue typing on that first question. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to the second question. So please feel free to keep going, but just so that we can continue this discussion, continue everyone to think on what we want to include in these resources. So for example, do we want to have some how-to guides, best practices, accessibility policies from other institutions? Oh, I see we already have an example. Sample surveys or outreach resources to engage disabled students and staff. Excellent. Oh.
There's an additional comment in the Zoom chat saying Screencast-O-Matic Pro does have a captioning tool.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that into our Google Doc here.
I will say that as we keep drawing together all of these observations, if you do have solutions or places to point to, be sure to make a note in that document as well.
All right, I'll go ahead and read out on our second question a few more. A repository of academic library-specific studies, papers that endorse equity and access, ideas for bite-sized projects to help small libraries with limited staffing and librarians make online materials better a little bit at a time. People who are willing to be contacted with questions on specific topics. Oh, +1, okay. So perhaps one of the +2, great. Perhaps one of the things that we can include on our NWHeat.org site is to have a list of contacts of who would be best to contact for what type of resource. Excellent. Some kind of voluntary experts list. Okay. Sample surveys or outreach resources to engage disabled students, staff, links/information on federal, state, regional accessibility laws and or requirements, materials compiled by topic, ties into usability so topics are easily searchable. Excellent. Oh, and I know that this came up in the discussion yesterday in a couple presentations, open access software that can be used for things like OCR. Okay. I'm so pleased that you're all participating in this virtual discussion that we're having. Thank you. Oh, and it looks like that we have a resource perhaps that we could include. Image description for alt text resources. Excellent, thank you. Okay, so that was part one of the second question, kind of the obstacles that you come across that you would like to have a resource available. And then part two is, as we're designing this repository, what do you think would work best for the user experience? We have one comment up here that I believe covers this a little bit, materials compiled by topic, but are there any other ideas that you have? And we're still on question two, sorry, Elizabeth. Still on question two, it's a sub question. So when looking at this repository, is there any way that would make the user experience better?
We have had discussions about major categories, and then as a light way to move into a first step, using tagging to be able to aggregate some resources. So we're looking for ways to begin to scale this and tap in on everyone's expertise. And I guess maybe that made me move us down to question three. I'm sorry if I unintentionally redirected us.
Totally fine. And I'm seeing a couple comments in the chat that I'm going to copy over. From Lori Ex Libris, finally adds captioning options to their universal viewer with the August release of Omodt. Oh, that's excellent to know. And Jennifer said, information organization and user interface seems to be the biggest challenges for us. So I'm going to go ahead and put that up with obstacles. Thank you. All right. It looks to slow down a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and I've read through some of the comments, but I can read through all of them, or if there's anything else that you like to really talk about, or if you have an example of where an example at work of an obstacle that you overcame, we'd like to hear about it now. And you could tell us what resource you used, or if you did not have a resource and this is why you're here for this discussion. We'd love to hear about those experiences as well. Oh, Lori has a hand raised. Please go ahead.
And I don't know if this is the right time to ask this question, but I see an obstacle being kind of our past. I mean, we have this huge glut, all of us have this huge glut of documentation laying around, right? And none of it is accessible, you know, because they were made years ago before people were really focusing much on how we were doing things. And I guess the obstacle to me is the volume of what we're looking at as a cleanup project. Is there best practices? Is the best practice just to move forward and do it right from here on out? Or is there, I feel like there's some kind of a responsibility to go back and clean up our messes.
That is a great question and is a great example. Thank you for bringing it up. We did hear a little bit about that yesterday with documents that don't have OCR capability, that it's best to rescan them and give them OCR. But Gloria, do you have anything to add on that?
Well, I'd invite people to open mic and share some of their observations. I think I'm hearing frequently among institutions as we work on these working committees, and I highly recommend that you investigate joining the this working group or the Alliance Ducks accessibility work group, because you will learn volumes in addition to being able to share information and develop events and resources. But all that to say, being in these work groups, we're able to hear from our colleagues in institutions. And it is a terrible burden, the legacy that we have, and especially small institutions like mine. We do what we can to remediate, but we really focus a lot on from this point forward. So a lot of it has to do with budget in cases that I've known. Others have some other observations of what the obstacles are for legacy remediation.
All right. It looks like it's winding down on our Google Doc. Again, at this time, I invite anyone who has a question or has an experience that they'd like to share. Please go ahead and unmic or unmute so we can hear.
Jennifer made the comment in chat. Information organization and user interface seem to be the biggest challenges for us. Jennifer, would you be willing in chat or by mic or whatever way, share a bit more about that?
Yeah, I can turn on my mic here. I think this is a broader problem for not just an accessibility database, but just how we organize internal documentation. And I've seen this a few places where, you know, maybe there's a wiki, maybe there's an internal site, an intranet, we seem to struggle a lot with, we have all this information, all this text, all these links, all these resources. What do we do with them, and how do we make it easy to find, and how do we make this database searchable, this knowledge base searchable? How to, you know, there are so many different tools out there, and it's like to best use these tools, you have to fully opt in and, you know, make sure you tag everything well, make sure it takes a lot of effort and a lot of everyone agreeing to do things a certain way. And that just seems to be a broad challenge in general.
Agreed. And I'm wondering if there are any of us in this session who would want to share a bit more about, you know, from your own view, things that we should be aware of, advice that you might give, or cautionary tales, anything that could help.
Hi, this is Ann Carpenter. I actually work in the disability office, but my office is in the library. And so my job is to convert text. And I think a lot of people seem to think that if they run OCR, that makes it accessible. And just because you run OCR on a PDF does not necessarily make it accessible. It will sometimes read the last paragraph before the first paragraph in a PDF. It all depends on how it was put together.
Yeah.
So, you know, it really needs to be run through a screen reader. And just because JAWS works on it doesn't mean that other screen readers that people like dyslexia will be using, it will work on. And it seems like, you know, I'm finding more and more they're using, you know, screen readers as their gold standard, but that doesn't mean it works for somebody that has to copy and paste it into their software to have it work. So just a couple of hints.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Yeah.
See, Bronwyn has their hand up.
Yeah.
I'm at UO, and I am a coordinator for undergraduate engagement and instructional services. And I have, some limited expertise and experience with accessibility. And I recognize there's so much I don't know. I'm interested in connecting with people who are specifically interested in things that are student facing, like LibGuides. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I'll share my email in the chat.
Excellent.
There's some comments in the chat that I'm actually not certain where sometimes there's all three places and no one knows which one to use. I'm not certain which one that responds to, but also, and yes, people don't know all the routes, so they try to use at least the ones they have heard about. So important to hear more from folks like you who know the ropes. And Kale, there's.
Anne's question I thought was a really good one. Are there readers that can look at multiple kinds of readability issues? I mean, so look at, kind of readability from a dyslexia perspective, from a visually impaired perspective, that kind of thing. That's it. I appreciated your comment.
I'm going to share very limited knowledge, extremely limited. So I take that in waiting what I'm about to say. But I think the theme that we have heard, and this came especially from the civil rights attorneys, was number one, running accessibility checkers is a great idea, but it is only an initial step. And so when we start to speak then about screen readers and such, most of us do not have the skill set to effectively use a screen reader, but we can do some keystrokes to see if we can navigate through. So that's yet another step. And I think what I'm hearing you ask about is, can we detect, according to the type of challenge that is presented in the content? I think it is not, and again, very limited knowledge. It's not so much the particular screen reader. We find that users adopt what works for their workflow. So while some may go to JAWS, others might use something that's built into a mobile device, a very light reader. Those are decisions that those end users make. But now with aggregating information from all of these rich resources, so that you would be able to come into a knowledge base and say, what do I need to watch for in terms of dyslexia? So that's when we start to learn, not so much from screen readers or a checker, an accessibility checker, but instead build our knowledge base for ourselves, saying never use a second space after a period, things like that, or how spacing and how cursive in font can affect someone with dyslexia. So I hope that helps a little bit. And by all means, others join in, correct what I've said and guide us a little more.
There's a comment in chat says, this is another place where I struggle with, quote, good enough. Scope on these projects can quickly grow massive. So I think it's important to keep in mind what your time and resources realistically are. Identifying specific user groups to help create focus can help, while not forgetting that identities are intersectional.
Yeah. And there may be those of us today who have some stories about how they've figured out how to help people manage this.
It's another link to laurenthelibrarian.com for, are you familiar with Lavita LibGuides? It really helped me make my guides more accessible.
Okay, Lavita.
And don't get discouraged. Every step you take to improve accessibility is a step further than we were before. Keep stepping. Thanks to, I believe it was the anonymous manatee who dropped those, the LaVita LibGuides link into the document.
Is there an interest as far as a knowledge base is concerned to try to identify events, conferences, trainings that are available from fellow institutions, that sort of thing? Yes, definitely interested in events and trainings. Yeah.
There was
And-
a note in chat to ask the client what they need in a document and don't assume they all they all need / want the same thing.
Very good.
That also calls to mind the keynote speaker talking about maybe don't just say you're accessible, specify what sort of accessibility options you have to contribute.
Yeah. We also had a notion that people would want hands-on types of events, whether or not they would be on the ground or virtually. We'd like to hear on that as well, if we included that in events and trainings. And any other scenario that you're creatively thinking about, we'd love to hear about it.
There's also a note in chat. I didn't find a whole lot in the SpringShare forums on LibGuides related issues around tabbed boxes and nesting pages. Not sure if LaVita LibGuides will address these, but I look forward to exploring. And from that, I can see some specific LibGuides accessibility could be helpful.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and we just got a note about Adobe Acrobat's I read out loud feature. Yeah, they're always looking for those readers, see how they're doing. So perhaps list of screen readers would be another resource. And I believe that the toolkit, the accessibility work groups toolkit, has some of that listed. And that's another point at which we're cross-referencing what is happening in these sites to be able to share the resources. Great, okay. Microsoft Immersive Reader and Edge. Potential funding sources. That could be an interesting list. And then also, beyond funding, we were delighted to understand from the DOE civil rights attorneys that they are interested in engaging with people and helping, assisting in specific ways. But it kind of takes that aura of I got you off of what people might think about such an entity, but instead they want to be proactive and help us all become more agile in developing accessible content. So we could list some of things like that as well. Resources.
There's another link. Lauren Bryant has a lengthy checklist of how to fine-tune LibGuides to be more accessible. Someone could copy paste that into the Google Doc. A +1 for Edge being surprisingly great, and a recommendation for using student technology fee proposals.
That kind of brings to mind a category we have thought about, and that is the idea of listing policies and statements from institutions. And again, the accessibility toolkit is doing some of that. And we're wondering what sorts of things are helpful at this point.
And so good comment, Nick. I bet enough people have sued Microsoft that they might be toward the forefront now.
And also, I will say that Microsoft is interested in a representative providing a webinar or two for our group. So if you go to NWHeat.org and look at events, they're talking about providing a webinar to show us how to use their accessibility resources. So yeah, go Microsoft. Resource for Canvas accessibility, yeah. Ooh, a recent article on screen reader history. Excellent. So I would like to reflect on the idea that in this moment, you are developing the knowledge base, and we would ask the question, how would you like to continue to communicate? What would be some great ways to be able to communicate at various levels? We've pointed out a few things. What works for you in continuing this conversation?
While people are looking into that, there's a note from Maria. I've been looking into language use policies for archives about disabilities since historic language is pretty terrible. Here's a couple I found. And then those two links put in chat are copied into the Google Sheet.
Excellent.
And a call for scheduled open calls would be nice. Being able to brainstorm on a group level has been really informative.
Excellent. Okay. Open calls. Yeah.
Related to that last suggestion of open calls, I just wanted to check if that's something that should be a separate event with NWHeat, or if that's something that could be nicely tucked into the Ducks open calls. I think our new Ducks team has not really gotten off the ground yet for this fiscal year, but I bet they could be convinced to add some time and some sections for NWHeat to join us, unless it feels like it would be more constructive for it to be a separate event.
You know, a thought that comes to me is that those open calls that could be hosted within the Alliance are beautifully focused for librarians. And then we can also have open calls that are both and, you know, librarians and the IT, the educational and instructional design, those sorts of things. So I think it's a both and. And then certainly the two working groups can communicate what has been learned. And start to move that into position for knowledge base.
Catching up on chat, there's a link to a talk from Bronwyn Mexon on engaging users through accessible and pedagogical guides. Some quotes about, I see there being room and I like the idea of less meetings, additional calls open to the wider community would be great. And Maria's comment about historic language surrounding disability. When I worked at the Washington State Library, I was updating corporate names for state entities and adding historic data. Feeble-minded was perhaps the least offensive. And all Alliance members are welcome to any of the open calls that we hold.
Yeah.
And to watch the videos that are posted online. For Maria, I've been working on a photo collection from the Oregon School for the Deaf, which was once known as the Oregon Institution for the Education of the Deaf and Dumb. It could be challenging dealing with historic descriptions. I'm curious, Gloria and Kelly, there's some comments about finding ways to build community, and there's some +1s to discussion and message board. Do you have a sense about what sort of technical restrictions you might have in terms of building this database, or is the sky the limit?
In terms of the knowledge base, if it would be public facing, perhaps. I can't give a definitive answer on that. I'm making an assumption it's going to be public facing. So both the consortia can certainly use it. And then I know both groups try to collaborate as much as possible with other consortia nationwide. So that public facing aspect can be a good thing. I think the downside is it can give us some sensitivities about sharing some information. I don't see it as, copyright or copyright clearance type of issues, but more just sensitivities about specific things. We can keep working with other consortia nationwide on how they're handling all these things. That's what we've been trying to do, to see how they have set things up, and what kinds of financial and ongoing sustainability demands it can make, in the maintenance of something. So we are looking at all sorts of things that people in this session might be interested in participating in, providing solutions for things like how we vet anything that would be submitted. So right now we are gathering some submissions. In addition to just thinking about what do we want in a database, we are literally receiving some possible submissions to that database. How would we handle that workload of processing those, from vetting a submission to actually building it into the database? So we're aware of all those questions, and we're looking for more partnership among all of our people in our consortia to donate some time to that.
Wonderful, thank you. Jennifer, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Gloria, you just kind of touched a bit on what I was going to ask about. If the intention is that this will be kind of a living, breathing, growing sort of project.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the goal is that we can continue to add things, and then there'll be some sort of moderation happening from NWHeat.
That's right.
Fantastic.
And we had emphasized that NWHeat is made up of all of us and all of the people that are in membership, all of the individuals that are in membership at NWACC. So drawing on the two consortia, I think this was probably what precipitated that idea of the two consortia, Alliance and NWACC, asking the question, should we collaborate on a major project for the benefit of both of our consortia? And this is what's come from it. So being able to engage all of us at whatever level we can contribute in any given time will strengthen that database. And yes, it's living, breathing.
Awesome.
We have about 10 minutes left.
Lori, would you want to say a bit about the Alliance Accessibility Working Group to give people an idea of what membership might be or participating in that work group might be like?
Yeah, I sure can. And I want to say, keep your eyes open. We actually have already filled our accessibility standing group for the year, and they're going to start meeting in August. We have a brand new group of 5 running down that road. And we almost always need more members at either at our midterm recruitment, which would probably be in January if we need to do that, and otherwise our next recruitment would start in the spring. Even if we have all of our members go forward for their whole 2 years, we try to bring in another group every year so that when we lose people, we don't have no one left to carry forward. You know, it's easier if you have some returning members to mingle with the brand new members. So we will have some options open in the next year for membership and accessibility, and what they are working on. Last year, of course, we had the big project with the PDF remediation checklist. And I know we've talked about checklists being the starting place, not the ending place, but we definitely thought it was important to give people a starting place. This year, we're still, as I said, we haven't met yet for this year that just begins in July. And we know we're going to be working with 2 other consortiums, notably Ontario Consortium of University Libraries, to try to figure out ways to make our power with our vendors a little stronger so that we can seek improvements in accessibility across the products that we use. So there's a lot going on there. And we're pretty excited about the work coming towards us. Thank you, Gloria.
Yeah.
Any questions, anybody?
And while you're thinking of those questions, if we could go to the last slide of our PowerPoint, just as the final screen for everyone.
And there's one more.
Yes, next slide, please. Perfect. So if you have any last minute questions, you can reach out to either of us, and please register for events at NWHeat. As Elizabeth just put in the chat, a knowledge-based survey, we would appreciate your feedback. And thank you.
And then also, Lori, is it true that we are looking for a co-chair for from the Alliance for NWHeat?
Yeah, we have feelers out with somebody who came highly recommended, but I don't think we've gotten to the point of an acceptance yet. So if we have somebody who is an Alliance member and, you know, works in libraries and is super interested in being involved, please let me know, let Gloria know, let somebody know, so that we can start to talk about how we might add you to this valuable group.
And that's also, there's the ability to identify what you'd like to do and your contact information in the survey as well. So be sure to continue to contribute all of these valuable insights and observations about the needs in that survey. There's room for those prompts for those, and then also to share your contact information if you'd like to get more opportunity to contribute.
I just want to say a big thank you to Gloria and Kelly for this conversation. I'm excited to dig deeper into all the links and things that got shared, and do encourage you all to fill out that knowledge-based survey because that definitely will help them move forward.